My guest this time is Brad Lehner, who I know best as the lead songwriter for the band Medicine. They got their start in the 1990s, and Brad has continued to make experimental and unique music across various projects since then. He's known for making very textured music and was lumped in with the shoegaze sound of the early 90s, but he prefers to think of his music as more psychedelic, which is the label that he uses for Medicine's new album, which came out the other week and is simply called Drugs. I watched an interview, like an old clip from 120 Minutes on MTV.
Oh, no.
And
oh, boy. Okay.
But I just thought it was interesting because in that you said that you actively wanted to sound like you didn't want to sound like any band from Los Angeles, which I thought was interesting.
At that time?
Yeah.
At that time.
Yeah, I don't want
clearly...
to box you into that. But the reason I ask is because when we were organising this, for no real reason, I knew you guys were from America, and I'm obviously calling you from England, and I just assumed from hearing your music that you were a New York band. So
that's funny. No, we're pure Los Angeles. Like, Jim and I were both born here even, which is unusual. A lot of people come here after the fact, after being born. That comment, that's always made me cringe because I don't think I was clear in that MTV interview where I meant like what was popular in Los Angeles at the time was like hair metal and grunge and stuff like that. So that's what I meant. I mean, obviously some of our biggest influences are bands from the 60s from Los Angeles. So yeah, that didn't come off well. But I mean, I can't imagine Medicine without Love or Captain Beefheart or The Doors or et cetera, Frank Zappa.
For sure. So you do still see that, you're happy to be classified as an LA band these days?
Absolutely. I mean, we were then too, but we were definitely the only band making that kind of music in Los Angeles at that time.
So taking the influences that you just mentioned and coming up with the music that you did in the early days, how did you find that sound?
You mean the early days of Medicine or what I did before that?
This is the thing. Like, I'm coming to this interview knowing Medicine's stuff pretty well.
Right.
And
Medicine, I mean, was clearly, inspired by a lot of the stuff that was going on over there where you are. But I think it was informed by our broader sense of perspective and having been brought up with American psychedelia as well. So I don't know if that's obvious or not. But it was definitely where we came from, as well as being massive fans of early industrial music like Throbbing Gristle and SPK and White House.
Yeah,
we're record collectors. We're fans of music, though I don't consider our music to be record collector music.
See,
necessarily.
I would say that Medicine maybe had a bit of a cult following. Maybe that's how we see you guys from over here, but I'm not sure. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate, and that's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah.
Having zero ambition to be a rock star any longer, that suits me just fine.
The first album of yours that I came to was To the Happy Few, which that came out when I was 19 years old. So before that,
right.
That's the thing. I've sort of gone back since, but that was my entry point.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
I love that record. I mean, that's a great place to start, in my opinion.
Yeah, right. Do you go back and do you think of your older albums as being, if you go right back to the 90s, does that sort of hold up for you if you go back and listen to that stuff now?
Yeah, I mean, for what it is, I mean, we have a much more modular approach to songwriting now, whereas the old stuff was literally old school, sitting down with a guitar and coming up with chord progressions and, no computers back then, essentially. So, I still like it. I think they're exactly what we set out to do. I particularly like The Buried Life, the second album, where I think we really got creative and stretched out and multicolored. I look at the first album as being sort of monochromatic, but it works. It works for what it tried to be.
Am I right in saying that you're the only member who's been in Medicine from start to current day?
Yeah, I mean, Jim has only missed out on one album, so he's right up there with me.
Yeah.
Jim the drummer, Jim Goodall. But yeah, it's my baby.
Yeah, I found it interesting reading about the structure of the band and how many projects you have outside of it. And I was sort of wondering why it was that what makes you go back after like sort of 5-year hiatus and go back and say, yeah, I'm going to do another Medicine album now. Why, what is it that draws you away from other projects and back to Medicine? And, how does that kind of thing work out for you?
Well, in the case of this new album, it was Jim coming over to my home studio with his drums and had basically the whole album sketched out beat-wise. I had no intention of making a Medicine record this year, and his playing was just so marvelous and inspiring that I spent the next 5 months making it into a Medicine record because his playing was so inspiring. I mean, he just turned 70, by the way.
Oh wow, okay, and he's still coming up with fresh ideas.
And beating the living crap out of those drums too. I mean, just I mean, I'm 55, so it's funny to think that like a couple of middle-aged dudes made this very belligerent psychedelic record. I love that.
Yeah, I think that's it's something I've found is that very few artists will come up with their best stuff in their early years. I think if they do, that's probably a sign that they're going to burn out quite quickly as well. Because I've started thinking that a lot of my favourite bands came up with their best stuff sort of between 30 and 40. And I don't know whether that's just, I'm sure there's some like confirmation bias involved with that, but looking at bands' histories and things like that, I think, maybe it's, if you come out with your best album at 21, you do 2 or 3, and then you sort of run out.
There's people who think we never topped the first album, so I mean, but they tend to be like the shoegaze purists, and obviously that's our most, within that canon, that first album. So I mean, I completely disagree, but I get plenty of that,
Yeah.
like but I mean, I'm not an ageist, and I'm a big fan of a lot of avant-garde 20th century experimental music, and a lot of those guys, kept cranking it out till they dropped. So I hope that's the case with me as well.
I find it interesting to think that now you can, because bands can make music from home, and it's obviously a different world to maybe the one that you started your career in. I sort of think, you're not, because am I right in saying that the new album is self-released as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this new album is not just musically experimental. The approach to releasing it was experimental in that we just stuck it out there. No label, no PR, no bio, no photo. So, and I can't tell you how gratifying that was personally.
I guess you don't. When you're not answering to anyone, it probably gives you a sense of freedom that you haven't had in the past. Right.
Well, I mean, I've always sort of carved my own freedom out, but in this case, it was pure freedom. And not only that, we released it less than 2 weeks after finishing it, which is just fantastic nowadays, like unheard of.
Yeah, I suppose if you haven't got to worry about physical release and sort of press, tours and all that kind of thing, then you can just go when it's ready. Yeah,
which is fantastic to me. I mean, and that, but that was the case. I think in the '60s, I think the Beatles and Stones recorded their stuff and it was out the following week or a week later because the pressing plants were up for it. Pressing records right now is just a dumpster fire. It's just impossible. Yeah, the majors doing, the umpteenth reissue of all the classics over and over again and, box sets and stuff really monopolizes the pressing plants. But vinyl will be coming eventually, but it's much better to just, I just want, we make music for people to hear it, so. And realizing that on the streaming services we have amassed, quite a nice following, and it's great to just go direct to those people.
Have you found that the response has been sort of similar to the last few albums, or in terms of its reach and it's sort of meeting the target audience well, that kind of thing?
I think this one's probably reaching it more because our streaming audience has grown so much in the last just year or so, for whatever reason. So, but we've always been received with hesitation and distrust. We're not to be trusted. We've got an ulterior motive, and we're not interested in fitting into genre descriptions, which are for squares.
Yeah.
To be honest,
I always find it really strange when a band like yours, where you started out with something that's quite niche. It's not as if your first album was just straight up sort of rock and roll or something. It was already quite experimental. And then to hear that you've had fans sort of say, "Oh, they've changed and they're no good anymore." Why don't they have the sort of trust in you to follow along a little bit?
No, we've done everything we can to ruin any sort of sense of consistency, or aside from our own bloody mindedness and insistence on doing what we want. I think a lot of people hear that we're like this first generation shoegaze band and hear us and go, what the hell is that? So, which is fine with me because I find a lot of that stuff really boring. But if I had to put a genre marker on us, it would be psychedelic.
That's the thing. The record you did the following year after the one that I mentioned before, I remember just the amount of really sort of heady production and like panning from hard left and right, and it's just because I listened to most stuff on headphones, and that was I just remember. And I never use headphones. I mean, except for like recording vocals or right at this moment, but I never listen to music in headphones. Is what I should say. Yeah, I mean maybe that's why it seems so extreme, because it's literally like I think it's literally the first song opens with something that's spinning from left to right ear, and it's pretty overwhelming. And I'd say that's pretty psychedelic experience.
I'll have to listen to that sometime on headphones.
So I suppose even you might never have heard that song on headphones then. Yeah, that's.
Well, no, I'm definitely, especially on that album, guilty of manic panning for sure. I mean, that album nearly cost me my entire sanity making. So, that makes sense. Yeah. It took me a few years to recover from that one.
What was it about that one that pushed you so hard compared to the previous ones?
It's hard to say. I mean, I just my will to do something interesting, and sometimes they just flow out. Like the new album was pure flow. I mean, I had no resistance. It seemed like everything I tried worked for me, and whereas that album, Home Everywhere, it was just I really had to work through it. So maybe that's why it has that quality. I think I think that's a good thing. When I hear about like people sort of almost complaining about an album being too extreme or having too much sound experimentation, I'm like, oh, I need to hear that.
Yeah.
I mean, the reviews weren't kind at the time. Pitchfork said I'd lost the plot or something like that, and I was like, that's exactly the kind of record I want to hear, where the person making it lost the plot.
I mean, yeah, if I read that, I would be tempted to see, because you've got to know why or how they've lost the plot, haven't you? That's definitely...
Right. That would never be like a bad thing, in my opinion, as a listener. It's not fun to be the guy losing the plot, but it's I'm stepped away from it now, and I'm proud of it. First and foremost, I do these records for myself to listen to. I don't know if that's like deeply narcissistic or what, but primarily I'm trying to entertain myself.
I think that must be kind of vindicating when you do make something for yourself, and then it finds a whole bunch of other people who are out there saying, "Yeah, I get this. This is good for me too." That must be a nice way around.
Yeah, it is. It's super nice to know that some people have really taken Medicine music to heart and have actually helped them, get through rough times or whatever. I mean, I've had direct communication of that to me from people I don't know, and it doesn't go to my head, but it makes me feel like I'm not just being a wanker,
Yeah.
but there is that also,
Yeah, of course.
But I mean. But yeah, no, that's very heartening to to do that, because music has done that for me. Other people's music has done that for me as well. So
what kind of music has helped you in that kind of way? Something that's really close to your heart, that's always been there when you've been going through a difficult spell.
It all starts with the Beatles. I mean, that's really incredibly boring and predictable to say, but that was that's my first love, and they're like a spiritual, they're a religion to me, in as much as I have a religion. And then past that, Can and Faust, Captain Beefheart and Zappa, those are the big ones.
Yeah.
Where, I could go on and on about that, but as far as emotional support, you can't get much better than the Beatles. It's a direct line to childhood wonder for me.
Sure. Would you be happy to choose a favorite Beatles album?
White Album.
Really, straight in, that no hesitation.
Yeah. No, that's the blueprint, because it's super dark. It has Revolution 9 on it. It also has Blackbird on it, and you know what I mean? It's Helter Skelter. It's everything, And that's I mean, I love them all, but that's the one. I feel really good about my musical journey. I feel like I've traveled between worlds. That's really important to me, to not be stuck in any one musical world. And I feel like I've had really wild, different musical experiences all over the place. So that's extremely gratifying as well. I guess the trick is to not just sit around feeling gratified and actually make something, which is what I'm so excited about this new album.
What kind of sounds and experimentation have we got on the new album to listen to? Because I've listened to it a couple of times.
There's quite a bit of modular synthesizer on it. It's the first album that I do all the vocals on. It's the first album where I've mixed the drums super high because I'm so excited about people hearing them. But it also has the same Medicine guitar pedal board that I've been using since 1990. So that pops up, almost like a, reassurance or reminder. Yeah. This is also the first thing we've put out that has like a, a jazz piece on it, a instrumental, something that I don't think would sound out of place on ECM. And of course it has the Beatles cover from the White Album. So, the idea there was to make it sound like the Melvins playing the Beatles. Whether it does that or not, I don't know. But you just wanted to do a really heavy version of it. So.
If you go over to the Who's Flying the Plane YouTube channel, you can watch the latest episodes of In the Studio, our video series talking to artists and creatives about their craft and showing the environments they work in. All of Series 1 is now available to watch, and the first episode of Series 2 is available now. And if you keep an eye out, they'll be uploaded every other Friday. So just go onto YouTube and search for Who's Flying the Plane, or you can follow the link in the description for this episode. What's going on in LA in the music scene that you're sort of interested at the moment?
Not a whole hell of a lot, but there are things that I've participated in, a lot of sort of people with their modular synthesizers playing in a park. There's quite a lot of that for some reason, I guess it's because we have the weather for it, but but there's not, as far as bands go, none.
Really?
Absolutely none.
Do you find that you're finding new music exclusively online then now? There's not the scene that's happening in Los Angeles isn't really your thing anymore.
Yeah, and it's not, there are a few new artists, but I hate to say it, but recreational listening tends to be diving into the past. I don't think it's particularly healthy for new, especially rock music. The only artist I could, that that I really like right now that's putting out anything resembling rock is like Angel Olsen. You know, I think she's wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't really speak to new music at the moment.
I was listening to a band. I think they're Irish, so I don't, and they're quite sort of new. So I doubt they've made it as far as Los Angeles at the moment. But they're called Just Mustard.
Oh yeah, I've heard that. It's a hilarious name.
Yeah. So you've heard, because I think they sound quite a lot like Medicine occasionally. They're definitely got
interesting.
Shoegazy. It's like a more sort of sparse production, but there's definitely the sort of textural stuff that you guys have.
Interesting. Yeah, I should say that, you know, I like bits and pieces of Black Midi and stuff like that. They're ilk. I mean, I like prog rock. So anybody who kind of touches on, you know, on proggy stuff is gonna appeal to me.
Yeah.
And I know they're pretty huge there, right? I mean,
Well, Black Midi.
or yeah,
Yeah, we
or
have.
is that my
Do you know Squid?
yeah, and you know, and Black Country, New Road, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like I said, I like that they're doing difficult, proggy, super, you know, music studenty type stuff. But you know, whether it matches up to, you know, the good old stuff is, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure if they're as good as Henry Cow and Magma. And,
Yeah.
You know,
Why do you think that might be?
I don't know, a little too flippant, maybe. You know, whereas those bands in the '70s were not afraid to be like strident and serious and, you know, ominous, and you know what I mean? Like there's this, I don't mind playfulness in music, but I mean, I sort of miss that sort of like overly sincere, dark, you know, invent your own language, you know, the songs in 1312, you know what I mean? I like that. I like bloody-mindedly difficult music sometimes. So I feel like they could go further, I guess, that crowd.
Yeah, I mean, I read an interview, or like a bit of an interview that someone did with Roger Waters, and he said something like, you know, people aren't, you know, you can never get away with opening an album with the lyric breathe in the air, don't be afraid to care, without people sort of saying these guys are morons. That's the most like overly sort of earnest thing, and it's, you know what I mean, like it takes itself too seriously. So maybe the time for
right,
that
but that's good. Yeah, I like that kind of thing. I like pretentiousness and sincerity, you know? I mean, Medicine's not joking around, you know? I mean, there's humor in it, and it's free, you know, freewheeling, and but it's also, you know, meant to be like, you know, a monumental piece of art. Whether it achieves that or not is not up to me to say, but I think that's what I'm missing from a lot of newer groups, is that just that, you know, making monumental statements, you know.
Yeah, I sometimes think that it's hard to, you know, listening to quite a lot of new music as I do. I kind of think it might be quite hard to push any real boundaries anymore. I think they're sort of, in terms of production, writing, lyrical content, I mean, have we met the boundaries? I don't know if that's a wild thing to say, but I kind of think most of the boundaries have been pushed as far as they can, really.
Yeah.
I think it's, you know,
I mean, that's what I loved about the first wave of industrial stuff. I mean, I really thought that they had killed music, and that was thrilling to me as a teenager. You know, I know White House is controversial over there or everywhere, but I mean, you know, hearing those records was a complete life changer for me, because it literally reduced music down to a high pitched tone and a low pitched tone and a crazy guy screaming through a feedback microphone. You know, I thought that was it. You know,
no one's going to be able to break that barrier down again, are they? It's happening.
Right. I mean, so I don't know if it's so much about breaking barriers down as just having inspiration, and in that, drawing from like the whole universe of sounds. And yeah, I don't know, I still have faith that somebody could come along and absolutely blow me away. I hope. I also think that music has become so decommodified and less central culturally than when most of the stuff I love was made, that I don't know if it ever can. I don't know if that's ever something that could come back, that it'll ever be more than a niche interest rather than the overarching cultural thing that the Beatles were, or the Sex Pistols were, or you know what I mean. I don't know if any one artist can achieve that anymore. I think everybody can go and find anything they want that suits their mood. So maybe that's healthier than the old way. That it's decentralized where everybody gets their music.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, one thing I found as a teenager, I remember watching films like sort of Quadrophenia and all the documentaries about kind of subcultures and like punk in the UK, and just sort of seeing all that kind of thing. And it made me quite sad that, when I was a teenager, there weren't really that kind of subculture-y, cliquey kind of thing where you dress like the music that you listen to. And I feel like I've missed out on that a bit. And I don't think that really, that's still the case today, isn't it? You don't see someone in the street and you can't guess exactly their entire music taste based on the way they look.
Right. And I think that, the 60s was like that as well with the hippies. So, I mean, I think punk rock was the hippies, like just a few years older, or their younger siblings. But yeah, it's probably a good thing that it's not like that anymore, because that's, uniforms can be a prison,
Yeah.
And I'm a contrary fellow, so I'm sure I would have hated any of that, I mean, I was into punk rock when I was a little kid and teenager, but it was never, I would never have gotten a Mohican or, Yeah, but then again, in hip hop music and, it's definitely related to clothes. So I just think it's maybe not in rock music or indie music anymore, but, in hip hop culture, it's still very much bound to what you're wearing and brands and things like that.
I posted on a forum some questions. I said that I was going to be interviewing you, and I got a couple of responses here I thought were some quite good questions.
Oh wow! Okay. What forum? I'm curious. What forum?
I know you. I didn't want to name it, but you've asked me, so I will. But it's the shoegaze forum on Reddit. I didn't.
Oh right.
I thought you might be a little bit miffed that I went straight to a shoegaze page.
No, because I'm not miffed. I mean, I understand that that's what what we're basically known for, which is, that's fine. I have no control over that anyway, but that's fine. I mean, it's better than not having anything to hang our hats on, really.
Yeah, so. Okay. Well, that's not so bad then. I thought you'd be like, stop,
no.
trying to box in what we do.
Yeah, I'd be like, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm going to storm out.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No, that's fine.
Cool, yeah, okay then. This person's name is Expanding Crystal. And they say that...
Of course.
Of course. They have your solo album, Neighbour Singing, on vinyl, and they've listened to it a million times.
God bless that Expanding Crystal.
And their question is, what does he do to get into a productive space for creative work? Does he have certain habits he follows, or a kind of method or practice?
Oof. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I try to make some type of music every day, whether it's a song or jamming on a synth or, I mean, it's my entire existence revolves around making and listening to music. So, like that album, for example, was the first batch of tunes I attempted after my son was born and he was no longer an infant requiring constant attention. So that was good because that represented coming back from a break of not being as productive as I had been. I love that they liked that album. I mean, that's a really significant piece of work to me. I was trying to make an easy listening record there. But really, it's just getting in and doing it. And it's the main thing that with my work from the last couple of decades, it just involves a lot of listening, like repeated listening, to the point where I'm completely done with it by the time it's done. So it's really just listening and thinking and then pouncing. That's so cool they brought up that record, though. I appreciate that.
Yeah, big fan though, I think. Okay, so the next one I have is Santonio32 says, this is kind of the question I asked you before actually, but what, if any, are the current bands carrying the torch that he finds interesting or good?
I always freeze up when I get asked that. I'm just miserable at that. Yeah, I don't want to say Black Midi because that's just, honestly, there's very few people in the what they would call the shoegaze idiom that I am excited about. I'm really sorry to say that.
Yeah,
but that's a huge turnoff for me.
But more broadly speaking, then, if there's anything that sort of,
well, I mean, Angel Olsen.
Okay, yeah.
How's that for a boring middle of the road answer? I just think she makes stunning music and she's got a gorgeous voice, and just I'm moved by it. I love Lana Del Rey too.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, that
so as far
Chemtrails
as,
Over the Country Club album, I think is great.
Yeah. I mean, she's absolutely wonderful. So yeah, really, I don't know. I'd have to say it's all like female artists primarily. Are the ones who are doing the most interesting stuff, I find. There's an artist here named Victoria Shen who casts her own records out of resin and then plays them with styluses on her fingernails, like fingernail attachments. So there's like 5 styluses at a time on the record.
That sounds
I think she's
insane.
great.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I'm trying to... And Claire Rousset. See, now I'm coming up with stuff. Claire Rousset is a sound artist, percussionist who is like a modern-day Luke Ferrari. Like a lot of field recordings, but a lot of very emotional sort of spoken words from her and her associates.
Yeah, I mean, the final question on here is a very short one for you. This is from Aggressive Bat 60. Wants to know if you listen to Blade with 2 E's. I don't know what that is, but
I don't either.
No. Okay.
But I'll look that up. Blade with 2 E's at the end. 2 E, like Bladdy?
Yep, that's right. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's a typo. I can't tell. I wouldn't know.
I'll look it up. I do not know that one.
Okay, Brad, what would you like to offer up as your Who's Flying the Plane hidden gem?
This is a great hidden gem. It's a record that came out on A&M Records in 1969 by a guy named Pete Jolly called Seasons. And it's, as far as I know, is the only record that he made that sounds like this. It's kind of a Miles Davis pastiche, weird jam record that sounds like it could have been made yesterday. Everything else he did was kind of cheesy, easy listening jazz, but this particular record is gorgeous and special. I think it can be streamed on the services, but good luck finding it on vinyl.
Okay. Lastly, your album is self-released. The new album is called Drugs. It's been out for maybe 2 weeks now.
Less
than 2 weeks.
Well, I put it out on Bandcamp early. It came out everywhere last Friday, the 10th.
Yeah, I think that's when I got it, because I got it on Spotify here. But so how can listeners find it? How can they buy it? And when can we expect a physical release?
Physical release, hopefully by the end of the year in a very small quantity. So keep an eye out for that. And if you want to buy it and have money go directly to us, Bandcamp is the best option. But it's fine if you want to listen to it on, the free option on Spotify as well. It's as long as you listen. I don't care if you pay for it.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for talking to me today, Brad.
And thanks for asking me.